Testing, testing. Yeah, we're all good. Excited for this one. So yeah, we are missing one of the people on the screen, but it's going to be good with us three here today. So thanks for joining me, guys. IBC Connected Ecosystems. So yeah, we're sitting with a good crowd for exactly that. So I'll give you guys a moment in a sec to introduce yourself, but a little bit of the topic. And a little bit of why a lot of us are here for the Interchain is that we're already in an ecosystem of like 130 plus IBC connected chains, which they're all tightly coupled with a lot of the interchain stack. And so we've seen more and more interest from sort of like more expanded ecosystems to like further the expansion and adoption of that. And I think we're joined with some fantastic panelists today in order to actually explore some of that. So I think these are three like epitome of new connected ecosystems coming to the Interchain. And so, yeah, firstly, we have JP from Thorchain. It was one of the first Cosmos SDK chains, but looking to now get into IBC. We have Fred from Cardano, which has been like getting into IBC as well through a sidechain implementation. Some things happening there. Looking forward to it. Sankha, you're from Babylon, and I mean Babylon's doing lots of exciting things. But yeah, I'll give you guys from Sankha across a chance to talk a little bit about the project and introduce yourselves properly.
Sure. So my name is Sankha. I'm the Chief Protocol Economist at Babylon. So Babylon, we're building the staking primitive on Bitcoin. As you know, like Bitcoin is a proof of work chain, so staking is a fundamental primitive in proof of stake, but we're bringing the slashing functionality to Bitcoin, and we are the first trustless self-custodial Bitcoin staking protocol. And over the last month, we went to mainnet. We have roughly $1.6 billion of Bitcoin deposited on the Bitcoin chain. So super excited to be on the panel.
Lovely stuff. Yeah, Fred.
Yeah, my name is Fred, and I'm coming from the Cardano Foundation. We are one of 30, 40 companies who work full-time around Cardano. And we work specifically around operation resilience, adoption, and regulatory clarifications. And what really excited us about the Cosmos ecosystem is specifically the SDKs. So what we found is that there's a set of very bespoke enterprise applications where these SDKs just are fantastic in terms of business logic. And you can really think about that, and then you can move that into Cardano in terms of the decentralization which Cardano brings. And that basically means that you get sort of the enterprise use cases in a bespoke environment for certain things, and you get the security of the decentralized Cardano, which is building on the expansion of what Bitcoin actually initiated. I think that's a very powerful value proposition, and we've done some magical stuff about that we can speak about.
Exciting stuff, lots of stuff in the works. JP, over to you.
Yeah, g'day guys, JP. So I got into Bitcoin in about 2013 and MTGOX. I had my coins on BTCE, and the hacker who hacked MTGOX laundered all the Bitcoin, about 600,000 Bitcoin through BTCE, through Russia, and the FBI shut the entire exchange down. So one day, I was trading meme coins on it. There was like Litecoin, Feathercoin, Beercoin. Like meme coins are cycle immune. They will always come back around in just different flavors. And by the way, if you are, a bit of a segue, but if you are trading meme coins, just understand it is a battle of attention and engagement. And as fast as the capital moves in, it will move out. And we're seeing a great meme coin rotation right now. Literally overnight, it's now and Twitter account. So unless you murate and you want to chase memes all day long, my suggestion is just chase cash flow. Cash flow lasts forever. Getting back to it, BTC logged in one day. FBI had seized the exchange, taken 60% of the assets. And I thought I'd lost half my coins on this damn exchange. Luckily, they rebirthed, they issued an IOU token. I was able to get half my assets back. And that was in 2014. And I thought the biggest thing I could do then is to build a decentralized cross-chain exchange, a proper cross-chain. Because at that time, everyone was talking about atomic swaps. And if you actually looked into the flow of atomic swaps between Bitcoin and Litecoin, there were 8 separate back and forth signing transactions between the two counterparties. And I thought, you know what, that is never going to work. No one is going to sit there and do an atomic swap with someone else in the world and do this kind of like rigmarole of 8 transactions. So we started building for liquidity pools, which was kind of inspired by Banker at the time. And the rest is history. Basically, because Thorchain is XYK liquidity with an MPC protocol, GG20, not multi-sig, threshold signatures, strapped to a Cosmos SDK state machine that coordinates the vaults and coordinates slashing and fund movement and stuff like that. So one of the questions I had is why IBC? But as a segue, the Cosmos stack is by far the best app chain stack. It is a live state machine that has a begin block and an end block method that wakes up every block speed, and you can dial that thing down to 1 second or lower, and it pokes itself. So it's its own keeper infrastructure. Whereas on like all these OP rollups and L2s and SVMs, they are dead machines. You have to poke them with keeper bots. So you need more infrastructure. And yeah, IBC is by far the best connectivity infrastructure that we can have. So I'm a big proponent of it.
I love it. I can very much see the sort of columns that each of you fall into, with like the Bitcoin staking and security, the enterprise, and very much the decentralized finance side there. So quick one, I'm Ollie, DevRel lead for Interchain Foundation. Been in blockchain since 2017, Cosmos since 2021. But this isn't about me, so I'm going to start with some questions with the panelists. So JP, what took so long? You had one of the first Cosmos SDK chains, but only now, many years after that launch, you're starting to look into IBC. And what's changed now that made you want to join the Interchain?
Two reasons. The first reason, as I told Chris back in 2019, Chris Goes, who was building IBC, is there was no economic layer to IBC. First of all, it wasn't hooked into Tenement. My argument, it should have been the relaying of IBC should have been hooked into the block production itself. So you could slash non-relaying, then incentivize the relaying of the channels by paying out block rewards to those who would relay. But the first versions of IBC just kind of viewed it as this kind of altruistic, let the channels free play, where they just wanted to throw it out there and see what happened. As a result, it wasn't tight enough for us to add it to Thorchain, because the protocol requires that its assets are always available. And to have these altruistic channels that people could be running out of the MacBook in the basement go up or down was going to create too much of a threat to the machine. So we kind of had to shelve it for a period of time. The other reason was we were pursuing stability. There's obviously the 2021 hacks where there was a whole bunch of permutations upstream, downstream from the Thorchain Ethereum router that had to be resolved. And there's stability issues through 2022. And even earlier this January this year, we had a big Dogecoin problem. I think Elon was pumping Doge, or they were tweaking block times or something, and the whole Dogecoin chain ground to a halt and caused issues into Thorchain. So we were chasing stability for many years. The latest version of IBC has resolved most of our early issues. It has expressiveness. The latest one actually has multi-token support. And the way we'll add it to Thorchain is we will enforce that every node has to run an IBC relayer. So now is the time. We've resolved the stability of the protocol, and we're ready to implement the latest version.
Exciting, and yeah, I like to hear the relayer incentives and getting relayers involved, like protocol level and such. That's super cool. Fred, has timing then also affected Cardano's decision around when to go IBC? Have you been thinking about this for some time?
Yeah, I think Cardano, we are a little bit slower because we like to do things properly, and we're one of the few chains who just keeps, ending a block, every epoch, and we've never been down. And so timing has definitely mattered. But part of it is also the enterprise adoption space. So we saw that quite early on from the Cardano projects. There was quite a lot of Cardano projects who were more advanced than sort of the traditional Web3 projects. And they were looking for business logic, and we didn't offer that on Cardano. So we didn't have that set of SDKs. But we were struggling with finding a good bridging solution that you can use the business logic and create a bespoke industry environment, but still have the security of the network. And about a year and a half ago, my VP of engineering, he came up and said, you know what, we want to do a shot at this one, because we think it really makes sense in terms of the enterprise adoption journey. Plus, we'll be able to offer something to our existing community, because it's a two-side street. So we're able to basically take, from Cardano into Cosmos, and from Cosmos into Cardano, and then bridge that together. And, that's just a part of the Cardano Foundation strategy. I was a little bit skeptic, I have to be honest, and say if we could actually get that over the border. And as you will see a little bit later today, Sebastian will present how that actually works. And I think that's going to be a massive drive for some, let's say, more physical use cases from the old world. And by doing that, hopefully we can start changing the old world. Because I think we really deserve to get blockchain out there, not just to the few, but to the many.
Oh, beautiful last words there. Yeah. Sankha, Bitcoin purists often distrust DeFi contracts, proof of stake. How does Babylon win those purists over?
Can I just say something
Yeah.
about the
Oh,
IBC?
yeah, please, jump in.
So when I first read the IBC white paper by Chris Goes, I was actually very impressed by one idea in the IBC protocol, which was that here you have an infrastructure product which does not relate to tokens. And I think crypto is plagued by building infrastructure, and eventually the value accrual needs to be tied back to the token. And I kind of felt that some of the ideas which were not there in 2019, and one of the ideas was like shared security, right? So right now, if you want to activate IBC, you have to kind of go and ask the validators, please create a relayer. Now the validators have generally an altruistic mentality, like, okay, let's create a relayer. There's dependencies in terms of like, if you say like, hey, I want to launch my pool on Osmosis, can you build me a relayer? Oh, somebody is about to launch a pool. There's money there, let's do this. Versus like if you're, in case of Babylon, our first product offering was Bitcoin timestamping. It was immensely successful because of IBC. We were able to integrate 60 Cosmos chains and checkpoint them on Bitcoin. If we didn't have the IBC network, that would, like, we would have to either build it or we may not even have been able to do it. So I think IBC as an infrastructure is probably the biggest success story of Cosmos as a stack. And I'm happy that IBC, when it started, it was not connected to a token. Because if the value accrual was connected to the token, maybe there was a hacking, there was an incentive problem. But because it was a pure infrastructure play, it kind of got a lot more adoption. And fundamentally, some of the biggest use cases in Cosmos, and I would say Osmosis, benefited massively from IBC because around like Luna and all these protocols, they literally had like a one-day integration time to Osmosis, and the volumes, you could be very fearful. So I'm actually super happy in terms of what IBC achieved, but now the IBC Union team, they're, I think, at the right time to integrate the economic layer back to IBC. So I'm super excited to see what they have to offer. Sorry, that was a little bit of a segue, but I kind of feel like Chris Goes and some of the core team members of who developed IBC in terms of the interaction which we have brought in terms of Cosmos. But going back to your question in terms of like, there are two types of communities in Bitcoin, the purist and the more progressives, I would say, and our co-founder Fisher yesterday talked about it, that at Babylon we feel very privileged that the core Bitcoin community have not come at us in trying out innovations in the Babylon layer. And I want to focus very specifically, what is Babylon's Bitcoin staking? So if you go right now, there's a very interesting research article on BitMEX Research where they're basically trying to say that Babylon is a success story because of a software update which the Bitcoin protocol did. It's called the Taproot script upgrade, right? And this idea was given out in 2014, but it took many, many years for eventually the ordinals community kind of doing that upgrade. So we feel that the Bitcoin community is not averse to innovation, but what they're averse to is not quick innovation. So if you're trying to come in and you're trying to do some software upgrade, and then, oh, fuck, like I missed it. Sorry for using a curse word, but so I think the reversibility of the store of value is very difficult. So you have built in a store of value character. You're open to innovation, but what it needs to be is that the consensus has to be there. And right now, because of this Taproot script upgrade, there's 100,000 Bitcoin, which is locked in the script in different protocols. And we at Babylon, we have seen the success of it. So I think what's needed is to educate the community, and the innovation layer in Bitcoin moves at a very different speed than the proof of stake world. And I think if you're a Bitcoin builder, you need to appreciate that.
Beautiful, and yeah, I think I like the first part, also giving a nod to the IBC early days, and yeah, not having that value accrual system with a token there. Yeah, it's what really makes it the TCP/IP of blockchain. But now onto the second part there, that pace of development and making sure things are right. That sounds like it fits in, Fred, with a lot of the design and way that Cardano moves forward. Like, so given that there are ideological similarities, ideological differences, especially between our communities, do you think that IBC is a bridge for more than just message passing?
Yeah, certainly. And I think also we are having the Cardano Summit in the next couple of days, right? And we're actually sort of thinking, oh, maybe this would be, but because we are flicking into building everything in open source, not just public source, what we actually saw was that the Cosmos community was in the Cardano GitHub repositories and picked this up and suddenly got really excited about it and started to contribute to it, and Osmosa got in contact with us and so on, right? So I think what we are seeing right now is, luckily, is that, some of the old fighting around political themes from the OGs in the space are right now looking a little bit more at, interoperability is a real thing. Not just between layer 1 and layer 2s, and you need different tools for different things, but also about how do we actually bridge something in that we get 1 billion people to actually use blockchain. And currently, if you look at what we can observe on the stack across all layer 1s, right, we see around 220 million active wallets on a monthly basis. And that actually makes it sort of the 6th largest country, but we are extremely defragmented. So on one hand, we have this army of people, the 6th largest nation, who can basically go out there and actually start changing the world order, which is what we really wanted to do with Bitcoin, right? But on the other hand, we are extremely defragmented. And I think what IBC really brings to the table here is another venue where we can collaborate together, but we still have some certain beliefs that one architecture fits extremely well for healthcare, where another one fits very well for the definition of money, sound money, I would say, right? Because we see a lot of not sound money on blockchains, right? So I think this is really about the maturity, not just of the ecosystems, but also the people who's contributing to it. And I think that's extremely interesting when you've been in the space for a while to see how that's going. But it also means that we need to be a little bit careful from the regulatory stand. Because now we are moving away from, let's say, it doesn't really matter, it's just a little bit of money. I'm paraphrasing a bit now, right? To that we are actually doing use cases with the National Space Agency, right? We have Dubai Police and other things, and we have requests for bespoke SDKs who keys into something which is as operation resilient as Bitcoin and Cardano is. And now the magic comes because suddenly you have operational oversight, not from a capital markets perspective, but also from an infrastructure perspective, right? And there, I think IBC, again, has very good definitions and good standards, but it is also a bit scary when you build bridges and stuff like that, because that is the weak point many times.
So the original version of IBC was just a token to an address, and that was actually one of the reasons why we had to stiff arm it for a while, because it wasn't expressive. You couldn't pass a memo. But today, it's moved to even to supporting interchain accounts. And that's going to give a birth of the next generation of proof of stake. So the original proof of stake, you may think of EOS or Cosmos Hub, esoteric staking with esoteric yield. So you had to stake a coin and you receive yield. This led to high inflation rates. So the cost of security was quite high. Babylon and Eigenlayer were showing that no, you can actually stake blue chip assets, which has a lot of monetary premium, and these security zones can rent the security on demand. They currently are paying out that security in points and soon tokens, but you'd hope that, and then eventually fees, but you'd hope that they could pay out that fee revenue in the actual asset itself. So stake ETH, earn ETH, stake Bitcoin, earn Bitcoin. Coming to how IBC fits into this is you could use a combination of IBC plus shared security in a Cosmos chain and just basically rent security off the Cosmos Hub, perhaps even the Thorchain Rune, which Rune has a significant monetary premium as well. And you could have these separate execution environments, and you could do things like dial up the block speeds to 200 milliseconds and compete with Unichain, or you could do a certain like a DeFi chain, or even we've had inquiries with Interchain accounts. You could spool up a DeFi app separate to Thorchain, but use Interchain accounts to call in to move Thorchain assets around on chain. So it's going to lead to, especially if those chains, these separate execution environments, can rent security at the same time and pay on demand. So it's going to lead to an explosion in micro apps. So being able to deploy like an app environment quickly, and you don't need to bring TVL over. You just call into where the TVL is. So I'm very excited about that. So as I keep telling people, that the infrastructure, it feels like every cycle we go through another infrastructure boom, but we're still so far away from supporting 500 million people on a single app chain, let alone one app chain. 100 million people. Binance is 300 million people. Telegram have 950 million monthly active users. One example, it's a bit edgy, but how do you bring OnlyFans on chain? OnlyFans has the highest monetary velocity of any app chain out there at the moment. They've been able to match consumers and creators together more so than YouTube has or whatever. But they keep getting debanked, right? And we just saw with the latest acquisition of a stablecoin, Stripe acquiring Bridge for 1.1 billion, I think it was yesterday. The future of L1s is tokenized US Treasury settlement layers, so stablecoin settlement layers. Every L1 and L2 will just become stablecoin settlement layers. So then how do we bring existing apps and telecom providers and users all on chain to pay each other in stablecoins? And I think IBC, the Cosmos SDK stack, renting security, paying fees, will be the winner. It's a bit below the 8 ball at the moment, so Interchain and your crew can pick it up a bit, but I think it's the winning stack. It's there for the taking. Go out and win.
Lovely. Stick around for my talk immediately after this. We're talking all DevX and adoption stuff. So, and yeah, obviously excited on that for the Interchain stack and helping with that side. But naturally, as you can imagine, I'm very interested in the developer experience. So I'd like to, pose it to the whole panel how you've found the developer experience of integrating IBC, especially that it's a little bit different for the three of you.
So at Babylon, we have a pretty strong developer group. So and I don't manage that, so I can't talk about it. But before that, I was at Osmosis, Thorchain. And I also built some of my own passion-driven Cosmos apps. So one thing which I feel which could be better is once you integrate the IBC to your application, you kind of have to go and hunt around for somebody who builds a relayer, right? And so what happens is, like, as a developer, you can do all the work, and then you are dependent on a validator who needs to set up this relayer, and they give you this feedback that, hey, this was not set up correctly, and that whole process is kind of very discretionary, dependent on which validator you're having. So I think from a developer perspective, it doesn't look to me as that it's all in one box. So I feel like the IBC Union team is trying to fix that, but that's maybe one of the, I would say, frictions I faced myself in connecting the application to the IBC network. Yeah.
I think if I should add something to it, I'm not so sure that IBC is necessarily the winning stack across all segments. I mean, if you take a comparison to R3 Corda or something like that, right? And I know that might be very far from the space we're sitting in here, and look what they actually achieved in interbank settlement across nation states, and how the BRIC countries are actually using this to settle real assets, including, not using the SWIFT protocol. And then compare that to IBC, what you clearly see is see two very different stacks who works in two very different environments, but the ability to use layer ones to bring that all together gives us the power of interoperability and gives us the power of choice in an operation resilient world. So I think maybe for some DeFi applications, I can see why you would like IBC, right? But there's also sort of a reason why IBC is not at the moment the one and only out there, right? And I think sometimes we get very locked into, we're very passionate about one particular problem in one particular industry, in one particular code base, and we forget a little bit the holistic picture. And I think that's at least one of the things we've been fighting with is, you cannot be something for everybody, but there is somebody out there who has been looking really deep in somebody for somebody, and how do you actually get the infrastructure of that to connect with the use cases and the levels of SDKs for the use cases you're particularly trying to service, whether that's Audi and BMW, or whether that is, how we can actually have a new type of stablecoin to replace the dollar today.
I disagree. I think if you look at the last 10 years, the market's already told you right now what's going to be the winner. TVL, yield, stablecoins. And if you compare IBC, which what else is out there, like to bridge between two L2s right now, what are you going to rely on? A cross protocol, hot protocol, layer 0, wormhole. You've got this, and they've all got their own security. You have to opt into the security model. The code has to be audited. I mean, just yesterday, someone was calling out a cross protocol from having infinite mint or infinite burn. I mean, you'd expect this to have met some standards. And I guess if you zoom out a bit more, you realize, like, the whole Ethereum community has always been very modular, very, plug and play, and just lets the ecosystem kind of moderate each other. Solana, on the other hand, is very monolithic, top-down, centralized, essentially managed, executing in their direction. Whereas IBC's in the middle, and like Interchain and the Cosmos stack, where it's very modular, but everyone is operating on the same code base. So once IBC gets upgraded everywhere, then everyone inherits those features. So we don't have this kind of smorgasbord of different security models. I mean, just try it out. Go out, leave this room today, and just move some USDC from base to like a new L2 that pops up tomorrow. Good luck, right? You have to rely on what? Binance. You have to deposit Binance, withdraw across. So why are we letting Binance be the default bridge provider to all these L2s? The reason is because they don't have IBC. And we can do so much better to get IBC. IBC just works. It's one of the things that just literally works if the two chains support it. Caveat, we haven't yet supported IBC on Thorchain yet because we're still going through the upgrades, but it's just a way better user experience, and it addresses the key addressable market, which is stablecoins, yields, assets. There really isn't anything else out there. I mean, the largest market of them all is money. And I mean, even oil serves money, and money itself is $100 trillion. So you service the biggest market of them all, money.
Can I get, so I guess like the lesson for Babylon is we're trying to, so we launched our mainnet, we have like a huge TVL, but the majority of the TVL came not from the institutions, but still like retail. So I see like I would say like some of the differences in opinion between the enterprise. But I think there's a bigger value in the abstraction of these two ideas, which is if you look at the decentralization of the world, then they're looking for efficiency and velocity, and I think that's what like JP has been talking about. And if you look at enterprise side, they're actually looking for stability. And we see this in Babylon when we're talking to the institutions. They're extremely concerned about the custody of Bitcoin because they have built a wealth, they have built a brand, so they would like to stake, but they want to be very safe that how is the slashing incorporated, how are the assets kept, and on the decentralized side, they definitely they have never made yield on their Bitcoin, so they want to make that yield. So I think it's a combination of efforts. The enterprise side needs to be understood in terms of what their concerns are, and as JP said, like the decentralized side, they want to get more efficiency.
Yeah, I think it depends a little bit on how you define what winning is, right? So I remember when I started on a trading floor, oddly 30 years ago, right? I walked in on a trading floor and there was an angry guy who took up the keyboard and just trashed the screen because, he sold instead of buying, and he screamed, "First level support!" And this little guy, he came running, with a new keyboard and a new screen, and he hooked him up, and the guy was spitting after him, right? And back then, it was before the Lehman collapse and so on, money talks, right? It's all about money, it's all about capital, it's all about liquidity formation, right? And I would like to think that, blockchain is about more than that. Blockchain is about bringing people together and solving some problems we can't do in a centralized aspect. And one of the large problems I have with USDC, you mentioned USDC, you didn't mention the problem, is that USDC is extremely centralized, right? It's relying on all Wall Street people who are sitting there and clearing everything between cross chains with manual clicking a button. And that might be really great if you really trust them. And should we trust them because they have a set of American licenses? Or should we trust them because the source code is not public? Should we trust them because we can't walk in the door and see how they're actually pressing those buttons to do those, swaps, as you spoke about before? So I think I really like IBC because it can do, as you said, more, but I really disagree that the only thing we should looking for is the definition of capital markets and money is king. I think we have to go to a system where we actually start thinking about we need to have a change in the political system, and we need to build a new social structure of developers, of contributors, of people who are looking for economic opportunities. And a part of that is not just follow the money. But I think on a proof of stake blockchain specifically, you need incentives. And there, to be very brute, as an economist, I have to say, their money really do talks, right? We saw that with Algorand, right? So you have a staking model where there's no incentives for staking, and when you go into a very deep bear market, well, suddenly nobody's running a pool, right? You do then, we have a centralized authority who gives them some extra money to ensure that we can run the security. Oh, we're running out of money. What do we do now? Well, we do the one thing we shouldn't be doing. We start printing money, right? So I think there's a trade-off here, but I think we have to go deeper and much wider than just say, capital formation and liquidity is king.
It's lovely. I'm seeing like synergies inside of the disagreements here as well, and so it makes me think that there is still a chance of IBC becoming that global standard.
So let me give you another example, right? So I had a meeting yesterday, right? And I'm not allowed to say exactly who it is, but it's a local company here. It's extremely big, right? They pay $100 million yearly for their license to Oracle. Let's just stand there in the room for a second, right? If you see what you can actually just do with the Bitcoin scripting language, or what you can do with representation of native assets on Cardano and with some IBC magic, or even with Thorchain, right? I think we have a serious issue in terms of how the infrastructure, not just around how we move money, but how we manage data across holding companies and across, private personal data, and how the glue of business has been driven. And it is true to a certain extent that, money drives value to a long time, but data is taking over right now. And what we see with AI and AI agents coming on top of that is going to really also matter about privacy. And suddenly, privacy equals being debanked is going to be the new theme. So where we've been fighting about constantly being debanked for the last 7, 8, 9 years, right? What the next thing we're going to fight about is, what about privacy? And that's a really, really big trade-off, right? So suddenly you have some data points, and then you're being data debanked, right? And how do you keep the provenance of that? And then you are back to you really need to have solid layer ones, but you need to have a good set of SDKs where you can actually have a trade-off, whether that's a CK roll-up or whether that is a non-exposed and exposed environment. There's many ways to kind of solve this, but it's going to be really big, and it's going to be a much different play than what we've seen coming up to this point.
Yeah, so that actually, unfortunately, brings us to time. We're actually 2 minutes over, but this has been, I wish this panel carried on for at least another 25 minutes. This has been really enjoyable. So yeah, I must thank you all for listening in, and thank you to JP, Fred, and Sankha. This has been a lot of fun.